Okie dokie. Let's go. Building our community
at Circle Time,
learning from each other
at Circle Time. When we come together, there's no mountain we can't climb. Come join us for Circle Time.
Hello, everyone. We are so glad you're here with us. If you enjoy this episode, please rate, review, and share it so that we can reach more ECEs and childcare workers. My name is Rachel Neville, and I am the Membership Coordinator and Policy Analyst at the AECEO, and I will be your host today. Today, we are so excited to announce that the AECEO has become unionized. And to help me talk about that, I have Amber Straker and Jess Tomas, both staff at the AECEO. Jess and Amber and myself were all part of the bargaining committee as the AECEO became unionized with our first collective agreement. For some of us, this is our first experience with unionization. I'm really excited for the three of us to kind of talk about our experience, what it was like for us, and why becoming unionized was so important. Thank you so much, Jess and Amber, for being here.
Thanks for having us, Rachel. So happy to be here.
Yes, I'm very excited to talk with you today about unionization.
Awesome. So I guess we'll start out talking about why it was important to you that the AECEO unionize.
I personally believe that our strength as workers comes from when we unite together, when we have a strong collective voice. So it was really important that that sentiment, which is also really reflected in our work at the AECEO, is also not just talk, like we're walking the walk. That also includes unionizing ourselves and making sure that the employees of the AECEO are also part of that strong collective voice. So it was really important to me that the AECEO participated in this process of unionization to, one, make it accessible to our listeners, make it accessible to the ECEs across the province, and then share the experience so that we could perhaps add to that collective voice with more unionization across our sector.
Such a good point, Jess. And honestly, my answer is very similar. I think at the AECO, we talk a lot about decent work and working conditions of educators and what that means. And I think becoming unionized is such an important aspect of decent work. And I think at the AECO, we have an incredible leader at the moment, and our executive director is fantastic. And the policies that we have in place really do enshrine our like care as our value. And I think that by having a collective agreement and by putting some of these principles in writing in a legal sense ensures that the people who come after us on the team get to have the same type of working environment that we have been able to have. And it also ensures for us as the employees of the association that if our executive director were to ever find a different position and we had a new leader, that we would still be able to be treated the same way with the same aspect of care as the lead in the way that we treat each other in our work. And so it just felt like having that collective agreement and becoming unionized was a way to ensure that the legacy of what the AECO is gets to live on with others who come after us the way that we have come after others.
That was so well put. I'll just add, I think, we needed to walk the walk if we were going to talk the talk. And experiencing unionization has really helped me personally to see how it can just benefit everyone so profoundly. And I'm more galvanized to advocate for unionization for ECEs now that I've experienced the benefits of working somewhere like that.
Yeah, strong agree.
So how did the three of us feel starting the process of being on the bargaining committee? And then how do we feel now that it's kind of concluded and we're actually unionized?
Oh my goodness. I'll jump in. At the beginning, I felt so confused and overwhelmed. I'm not gonna lie. It just felt like a lot of the terminology were things that I hadn't heard before, and the process seemed a little bit daunting. Like, how can we ensure that we have the best things in the collective agreement possible for the rest of our work team, and how do we like represent them in the best possible way? So it felt a little bit like a lot. But as the process went on, it just became very natural. And the folks who were working with us were fantastic in explaining the things that I didn't understand, because this is my very first experience with becoming unionized. And now that we've hit the end, it's so incredible to look back and see how far we've come and to really celebrate the wins that we've been able to achieve in that collective agreement for the rest of our team. So it started out a little like eek, and now feeling super awesome.
I've had some experience in unionizing as well as for new units, but I've never actually been part of a new unit that has unionized. I have to say that having a really supportive employer, I think makes a huge difference. I'm so happy to have had this experience with Alana as our director, with the board of the AECEO as our employer, because there was such an element of collaboration in this process that I think is not necessarily widely known as a possibility to the public. That this process doesn't have to be adversarial. In fact, it can be really beautifully bonding and even validating for everyone involved when you can point to things that are working really well and say, yes, we want that forever because it is something that has really impacted my life in a positive way. But then the other side of, talking out really difficult situations, maybe around things that the employer wants you to have, but maybe there's no funds, or maybe it's things that the staff don't want to do, but that are really important to the organization. Those kind of conversations happening in an environment that is not traumatic. I don't know if that's the right word, but like not stressful. We aren't coming together at a point of conflict. We're coming back together by choice ahead of these conflicts. And so what a beautiful opportunity for us to think about these things together without there being a point of conflict that brings it about. We were able to contemplate difficult situations like leaves for really difficult situations, like if you were leaving an abusive relationship. Rather than waiting for the moment that that needs to be addressed, we now have really great language in our collective agreement that makes that not a worry when something like that happens. So I think like at the beginning, I may have been a bit more comfortable than maybe Amber with the process, but I've also experienced now something that I haven't had experience before, which is a really collaborative and healthy, supportive bargaining process that everybody came out of feeling more connected with each other.
It felt like such a beautiful example of like the reciprocity of care that could exist within a workplace that is not necessarily found everywhere.
Yeah, that's so true. Similar to you, Amber, I was very nervous. I felt like a big responsibility for being on the bargaining team, and to both of you and also to our colleagues and to the people in these positions that will come after us one day and inherit this collective agreement. But now that it's over, I think Jess said this when we ratified that it feels like a historic moment for us and for the AECEO, and it's so special that we got to do that together and be a part of that. So I'm so grateful.
We've left a legacy.
Yeah, what a beautiful legacy too.
I think everything you said, Jess, around it being such a positive experience and being so collaborative, I really hope that, I mean, I know not every unionization situation is like that, but I really hope that's something that ECEs get to experience, because it really is a very powerful thing to have that type of influence over your working conditions and be able to ask for what you need and have an employer say, yes, we want you to have that. And actually, we want you to have more than what you're asking for. It's amazing.
And I think that that comes from a place that typically we don't talk about unionization in, which again talks like referring back to what Amber said, we weren't in a point of turmoil. We were approaching this with really level heads and that we enjoy our work and that we want to keep doing more of what we enjoy. So let's codify what is already in place. You don't need to wait for turmoil to be the impetus for you to unionize. You can also enjoy your work and say, I want this to be in place for me as well as anyone coming after me too. And then as these collective agreements mature, because that's what happens, you have now this starting point to get better and better and better collaboratively with your employer.
Absolutely.
I'm curious what you both feel you learned through this process or like material benefits that you've received from the collective agreement and from being unionized, and also that we hope for other ECs.
I think one of the biggest wins, in my opinion, for this collective agreement, in material ways, was our phone and internet. And I know we've been talking about the collective agreement in more of a theoretical way and conceptualizing what it could mean for workers, but it also defines really material ways in which my life will be easier to manage. And that's one of them. As this was being negotiated, I don't think I realized how much of a difference it was going to make in my life to have my internet and phone bill paid. And when I finally got to submit my invoices, I realized, oh my gosh, this is going to make a huge difference in my life. And so while there are certain things that are maybe more complicated to talk about in a podcast in terms of uh, the compensation gains that we got, that one is such a clear example of how a collective agreement changes the way you live your life.
Yeah, and I think that brings up such an important point around how they're so tailored to the individual workplace. You know, we all work from home, use our phone and our internet all day, every day to do work things. And so that was something that was really important to us to be supported through this collective agreement. In other workplaces where folks are not working from home, that's going to look different. And those things are going to be more supportive to what they're experiencing in their workplace.
Not quite the material thing, but just sort of like a vibe thing. What I've kind of gotten from this, or what I hope that other ECs will get from this, is just the opportunity to have discussions like this. Like to see that this is something that the AECEO has done and the way that we were able to do it, kind of what Jess was saying earlier, in that really collaborative way, just to recognize that there are employers out there who care so much about their staff and who really do want to have workplaces that take care of their staff. And knowing, especially in our work, it's so prominent, the retention crisis and the workforce crisis that's happening with early childhood educators, that not just for them, but for their supervisors and managers and folks who run the centers and the spaces where ECs work, that this is possible for them to do. Like, I hope that there are folks kind of on both sides who can see what the AECO has been able to accomplish, both from a staff perspective, but also from our director and employer with the board's perspective, just to maybe perhaps emulate that, to have more spaces where ECs are unionized and have the benefits of a collective agreement to support them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that as an ECE, a lot of my values are really grounded in community and collective and supporting everyone and making sure that there's spaces where people feel like they can be themselves and show up as the best versions of themselves. And I think, like you said, Jess, that is a very theoretical concept, but I don't think I really realized how concretely it could be realized through a collective agreement. You know, those things that we just sort of carry in our hearts as our hopes for each other became part of the policy of working at the AECEO. And that feels not only like really safe to be in this work, but also the things that I care about are being reflected back to me through my work. And that it just feels like very full circle, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I also feel like I'm because I've had unionized jobs before, but
Hmm.
I hadn't built a collective agreement from scratch before. And I know we have to give our credit to our advocacy partners and our other organizations for building collective agreements prior to us that we could take from, but
Hmm.
that I do feel a real sense of pride in that we built this from scratch. And I learned that I could do that. To be honest, I didn't necessarily think that I was going to be as involved in all of the language. I thought, this is really not my wheelhouse. Union language and collective agreement language. It's a completely different way of communicating. But I learned more about how that sentence influences my life and how I can make it work for me rather than trying to make my life fit this piece of language. So I think that I am much more confident than I've ever been in reading a collective agreement and also seeing the ways in which I'm affected by that language.
Yeah, I think my learning kind of goes alongside yours, Rachel, where in our work, we talk about unionization as a method to achieve decent work. And so I've always had this abstract idea of how unionization is beneficial. And I have had unionized jobs in the past, but I haven't been involved in the process, or I haven't been involved with the collective agreement. It's like this massive document that I'm trying to read and didn't fully understand all the language in. But through this experience, being able, as Jess was saying, to actually think about how each sentence impacts the way that we and our colleagues get to live our lives, it's not an abstract idea anymore. Like, it's so concretely obvious to me now, more so than it was before, about how unionization and having a collective agreement can benefit an employee. And just seeing the way that we were able to put that together in a way that really benefits us as a staff team to ensure that we can do the best work we can for the organization, which for us, that in turn means doing the best work we can for early childhood educators in Ontario. And if we have this collective agreement now where we're supported to do the work, it's the same thing we say about ECEs, right? If an EC is supported, how much better are they able to care for the children that are with them? How much better are we now able to care for early childhood educators because we have these concrete decent work principles written in stone, so they say, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think another thing I really learned through this process was, I suppose it was a little humbling because, like you said, Jess, there were so many just turns of phrase and ways of wording things that we don't really use in our regular everyday lives that are very union specific. And it meant that I had to really be honest about what was confusing me and what I didn't know or understand. So I think there was a lot of times where, I kind of just put myself out there and said, I don't really get this. I don't know what we're talking about right now. And helping each other understand things and asking questions, like that was all very positive. And coming away from that experience has made me less afraid to admit when I don't get something because yeah, it's normal to not understand every single thing in the world and asking for help is a good thing. So that's definitely something I also took away.
I love that, Rachel. And it leads me to think of something else that I think the three of us were able to get from this and the whole team, where we brought a lot of these questions to the rest of the staff team, or a lot of the different decisions that we had to make and choices that we had to make. And we are the bargaining team, so we did speak on behalf of the staff, but there were questions that we didn't just answer, where we thought this has to be a bigger conversation and we have to, have everyone's voices included. And the way that we got to bring those questions to the rest of the team and really talk them out and talk about what was the most important to us individually and together also strengthened us as a team and gave us that sense of bonding that comes from those deep, thoughtful conversations about what is truly meaningful to us in our workplace and our lives.
Yeah, and I want to just add another element to this that is so critical. Gina, who was the rep that that helped bargain alongside the employees, was so instrumental in making the collective agreement and the bargaining process accessible to us and took the time to, exactly like what you said, Rachel, took the time to talk through things, provide examples of why this language was important, a historical reference to why this language is important, the political context to why this piece of the collective agreement is so important. And Gina just provided that confidence for us, but was always receptive to what it is that the members like ourselves were hoping to achieve. So I think that's another really another element that maybe will be helpful to folks who are listening if you are interested in unionization, that you don't have to do it alone and that there are people that will guide you through the process too.
Yeah, honestly, huge shout out to Gina because she was incredible through the whole process, and it would have been much different without her. And I think it was much better with her. Yeah. Thank you,
Gina,
Gina.
if you're listening, thank you.
We appreciate you.
Amber and Jess, do you have any messages you want to send to ECEs who might be listening?
My message is that if you are already unionized, please get involved with your union. You are a member, they work for you. So please go to the meetings, talk to your stewards and your reps, and be as involved as you can. And if you are not yet unionized, I hope it's something that you might consider. And I hope that it turns out to be as an incredible experience as it has been for us.
Just want to leave folks with something that really helped me when we were going through this process. This is one step towards our entire sector of early childhood educators and childcare workers uniting across the province and across the country. So I'm so proud to be a part of that process of uniting us, and that I can't wait to welcome more and more people to that collective voice.
We are so much stronger together, always.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'll just share that the AECEO is working on some informative documents and possibly other podcast episodes to help folks understand more about unionization, how they can become unionized, and what that could mean for them. So please stay tuned and check our website if you're curious to learn more. Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider becoming a member. The link to join us will be in the episode description. Your membership makes a difference in the lives of ECEs and childcare workers, children and families, and allows us to continue doing this work. To all the members currently supporting us, thank you so, so much. To all the ECEs and childcare workers listening, you are incredible. You deserve decent work and better pay, and we wish you all the best.
Rachel, you're getting so good at this. Oh my God.
Yay!